Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Unmasking Autism with AFO. I am your host, Carley Marissa Dummitt. This podcast is presented by the Autism Foundation of Oklahoma and funded by the Oklahoma State Department of Health. For those who don't know, the Autism Foundation of Oklahoma strives to improve the lives of Oklahomans with autism across the lifespan. Before we jump in, I would just like to say that this podcast will discuss autism, suicide, mental health and wellness, among other topics, with autistic individuals and different professionals, with the goal of unmasking stereotypes, increasing awareness, advocating for mental health and wellness, and attempting to shatter the stigmas of these topics through conversation and personal experience. All right, and so to jump back in, we're all comics, we're all autistic, we all love art. And we hear a lot about art therapy, and the definition of that is the belief that self-expression through artistic creation has therapeutic value for those healing or seeking a deeper understanding of themselves and their behaviors. Ashley, you have a professional and educational experience with art therapy, so would you mind talking more about that?
Yeah, I guess I could say it's somewhat that. When I was in my 20s, I went to art school, and I found volunteer work through a nonprofit that it was a family services organization. Sorry, they worked with a lot of adults with special needs that could not live independently. And so I did an art therapy class there, and I really enjoyed it. And something that the previous art therapist did was have very structured lessons, that everybody did the same thing. And I was like, I don't think I want to do that. I want to sit down and get to know each individual and know what they're wanting to achieve and where they're at emotionally, and what works best for them, what are their interests. And so instead of making them all draw and paint the same thing, and I would come up with individualized art lessons for them that wanted to excel more in drawing or painting or whatever. And I think by that approach, I never experienced one meltdown the entire time I did this class. Not looking back at it, I'm like, that's actually kind of impressive. Yeah. Because I don't know. But that I wanted to pursue that actually as a career, was art therapy with people that were unable to live independently. But then I became sick with lupus, and I just had to do away with any career goals as far as that goes. But the art therapy that I've been with recently is at a homeless shelter, and it's beneficial in every way possible. I don't know, and something that I've noticed after working at the shelter is how many people that are on the streets that are dealing with spectrum-related issues, that have developmental and intellectual challenges, that are unable to take care of themselves, or maybe their caregivers have died, or they, and so this is what they're left to. And so having that art therapy for people like that in particular is just crucial to daily surviving, so.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, how do you all use your art, comedy, whatever it is? I dabble in a couple different artistic forms of expression. How do you guys use that? Or how do you incorporate your autism and or your mental health? Because I feel like we've all touched on how we also struggle with our mental health as well. How do you, merge the two?
I definitely used art as a stem for most of my life. I would get in trouble because I would draw in the margins of tests, in the Bible, and hymnals, and I didn't even know I was doing it. It would just be just drawing. And music, of course, is a stem. Comedy specifically, I think that's just great for I don't know, processing a little bit. The kind of comedy that I do is very, it's not really funny. It's not funny. It's amusing, maybe. I don't really know. Okay. But I've been told it's wholesome. I think it's just it's just stuff that I observe that is interesting to me. And you go through your life being laughed at without knowing why. And you're constantly being the funniest in the room, but not really getting why. And being able to wield that power on purpose is so empowering. It makes you feel, I don't know, like in control a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before, as everybody's laughing at you, now you can be like, I can't remember her name, Hannah Gadsby. You guys know?
Oh, yeah.
I love the way that she looks at comedy, and I relate to it so much because it's very much like, much in the same way that like social interaction is automatic. I think a lot of people don't understand why things are funny. And when you know the structure of jokes, the structure of why things are funny, it empowers you to make friends and connect with people. So I think that's why a lot of comedians are autistic.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a good point. I definitely use talking about my mental health and my autism and my comedy as a way to process, but in control. I like how you said you can control. People aren't laughing at you. You know, you're controlling them, but also to take away the shame in which I feel like I have carried most of my life for being different. If I'm laughing at myself, you can laugh with me, but like you said, you're not laughing at me. And I use it as a way to take away shame for myself.
Yeah.
Actually, I met Cody at the Norman Music Festival, and I was like, he was, I think, the first other autistic comedian I'd met on the scene that I heard was autistic, and then you as well.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, what are the odds? There are two autistic comedians. And it was, and then as I went, it was like another one. We've just infested the scene.
Yeah. I know.
Really? We'll talk about that later. That's not important right now.
Name him.
Sabian. Yeah. So what about you guys?
Yeah, love track. I've always been into like crafting and drawing and painting, doing little things like that my whole life, and I really think that I used comedy growing up to try. I don't know if it was just necessarily to make people like me or to deal with uncomfortable social situations, but I mean, like I was voted class clown in 7th grade.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was like one of the silly kids, you know. I really excelled in theater. I loved that. I excelled in music, art, all of those things. Everything else in school was a massive struggle for me. So it's like art, anything along the lines of art and being creative has really been what's like kept my head above water like my entire life, you know.
100%. Actually, to touch on theater with you real quick, I realized as a very young child, and I feel like that's why I wanted to be an actor so bad and why I went to acting school, was I could imitate the emotions of what was going on. Even if I didn't like understand it, I could watch like, you know, a TV show or something, and then I could imitate that and be like, all right, this is what being upset looks like.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm able to, I mean, autistic people are imitating all the time and mirroring, but yes, I forgot art or their.
I was the same. Yeah, I was like exactly the same. Because sometimes like I would get cast as a lead all the time. And I'm like, I don't understand this role. You know what I mean? But apparently I'm great at this, you know? Like, and I realize later now, I'm like, oh, that's why I'm like good at acting, because I can like play off of people really well.
100%.
You know?
Oh my gosh.
Did anybody else have bleed through from like a safe show or a safe movie that you didn't realize you couldn't just translate it into regular life?
What do you mean?
So like in high school, I had this moment I remember when I realized you can't just translate jokes from Frasier into normal conversation. Because in Frasier, you punch up a joke and someone else is going to hit it down.
Yeah.
And I remember punching up jokes and nobody was doing their side of the dance. And I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I remember realizing like, oh, that's not appropriate. Should have been a clue.
Yeah.
I have most of Frasier.
No Frasier fans
Yeah,
here?
no.
Come
I
on.
had most of Frasier memorized by the time I was in high school.
Okay.
I mean, literally, like my mom would play it periodically. We play a game where she pauses it, or I'll pause it, try to remember what they're going to say, and I get it right most of the time.
Oh, okay. No, yeah. I was obsessed with Degrassi.
Oh, that's a good one.
Degrassi came out when I was in 6th grade, and they were in 6th grade. But so Degrassi is my Frasier.
That's an interesting parallel.
Yeah.
Just an early Drake fan. So.
Honestly, from day one, baby, Aubrey Graham. That's right. Anyways, Cody, what about you?
I would say that until recently, I had a pretty narrow view of art. Like I never painted or drew or did anything like that. But throughout my life, I found solace in the pursuit of like building something in an abstract sense. Like it gave me great satisfaction. So like when I played professional golf and just competitive golf, even when I was a kid before I turned pro, I would derive great satisfaction and peace from hours spent alone, like crafting an element of my game, whether it was like a specific technical change I was working on in my swing, understanding the way different types of grasses and weather conditions impacted the flight of the ball, just learning more about how to like build this thing. And I think that was, in a way, an artistic expression, because I approach comedy in much the same way. You know, it's like I have this topic, and it's like I think this thing is funny. What makes it funny? And like kind of breaking it down into its component parts and repackaging them and presenting them in a way where, like, I think that a good comedian is able to say, like, isn't this thing funny? And everybody's like, yeah, that thing's kind of funny. But like a great comedian is able to illuminate it in such a way that it's like, here's this thing that's funny, that we all agree is funny. Here's exactly what's funny about it, why it's funny, and the most precise angle to like illustrate the humor and angle that is trying to be conveyed most completely. And I think that type of kind of chiseling away and rebuilding appeals to me a lot. And like I think that whether it's art therapy or anything that allows you to kind of get out of your own head and kind of the like this like metaphysical realm and into like your present moment, whether it's physical exercise or painting something or a present conversation with a friend or anything of that nature that kind of gets you out of your own like metaphysical space and into the present moment, can be very cathartic and grounding in a way. So I do like things like that.
I agree. Getting into the flow state.
Yeah.
Yes. How did you all how did you all get into comedy? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what made you be like, all right, I'm gonna be a comic now?
Okay, I'll go first.
Yeah.
We all just looked right at you.
Well, it's something that like I'd considered like in my early 30s even, but like my lupus and autoimmune issues were just like so out of hand. The only thing I was able to focus on was trying to maintain employment and health insurance and treating this condition so it doesn't kill me, you know? And so that just kind of got put on the back burner for a long time. And then that was happening in Texas. When I moved up here to OKC, I moved here for medical treatment at a research facility. And so I went through all of that, had another autistic burnout. And then right before the pandemic was going to happen, like in January and February of 2020, I was like, all right, I'm going to do this comedy thing. And there was a girl that I met at the treatment facility, and we're like, we're going to do this together. And then the program ended, and then like within a matter of days or even a week, it was like immunocompromised people need to stay at home and isolate. And so I just ended up writing throughout the pandemic, and a lot of this stuff isn't relevant now at this point, you know what I mean? But I still had jokes, but I was like, I'm going to do this because I don't know what else to do with myself. Honestly, I don't know what else to do with all of the trauma that I've experienced. Like, I'm just at a point where it's just like, life is so absurd and tragic that it humors me. And so that's, and I use, my number one thing that I want to do when I'm on stage is to just not filter myself. And it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. And the more comfortable I get on stage, I think the weirder and darker my comedy's going to get. It's just that's like how real life works for me though too. That's how my friendships work. And that's how people decide, oh, maybe I don't want to be your friend. You're a little too strange for me, you know? But yeah, like I think that my autism is like a superpower as far as my comedy goes, you know, and it helps me filter through and process. Like I think going without the autism diagnosis is likely the biggest like trauma of my life. It's only made everything else more difficult, you know? And so being able to get on stage and talk about suicide and intrusive thoughts of killing yourself and all the different like messed up diagnoses that I've had and things that I've had to experience because of that, other traumas, like it's very like liberating to be able to do that, you know. And also I know that there's going to be people that are going to hear my comedy that are like, have felt the same way, that are probably too afraid to even say it to a therapist. You know what I mean? So that's, I don't know. Comedy is like, I don't think I'll ever stop doing this. You know, like this has been such a good therapy for me. But yeah, that's just kind of, I didn't know what else to do with myself, really, because I was like so suicidal. And I finally came out of it after going through ketamine treatment because I have treatment-resistant depression. And so that pulling me out of it, I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. And now I'm here.
Glad
Some
you did.
good friends.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah. Thank you.
You said your friendships last about a year usually?
Usually, yeah. We're coming.
I'm gonna these last few months. I'll try to enjoy
so,
them.
all right. Yeah.
And you just started another clock.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
What about you, Cody?
I would say that I always had, and it kind of goes back to like trying to assimilate into groups. I've always had, and I don't think this is like autism related, this particular piece of it, but I've always thought that the most outrageous things and the most silly things were funny. Like, and that was the most fun for me. And but I was like, okay, that doesn't play well with the whole like group assimilation. You got to tone that down. And so I would tone it down when I was trying to make friends. And then the things that I was pursuing individually were school. My best friend and I that I was talking about, we started a couple of companies together and they were successful. And so we had to really spend a lot of time there. And golf. Those are all very structured, serious things. There's not a lot of time for like play. And there was no break from that. It was either like take a break from these obligations and try to like hang out with friends or a romantic partner. And that was still like work for me because I'm having to do like the mental calculations of how to do it. But then also school, business, and golf were also mental work. And so there was never any let up. And so then in a very short period of time, school ends, obviously. So school ended. So I didn't have that particular outlet. And even though, yes, these things were like difficult and they were mental work, I got a lot out of them too. Like I really liked them. School ended. My best friend got married and wanted to start a family. And so had to like step back from these businesses. I wasn't able to run them myself because I was still pursuing golf. So we just kind of had to let them go, which is a whole nother story. And then in golf, I had quite a few serious injuries, and I was living in Asia, playing over there on that tour at the time, and I had like the final injury, and just wasn't after the most recent back surgery. It was just like abundantly clear that was kind of it. It was no longer like a golf thing; it was like a quality of life thing. So it was just like it wasn't even like, oh, the doctor said I couldn't play. It's like I'm just like not able to. I mean, if I really pushed it, I could probably like play every couple of weeks maybe, but to play at the level that I was playing at and to progress from there, because I wanted to be the best player in the world, you have to put in the reps and the time, and my body just couldn't do it even if my mind wanted to. So, kind of losing all of these things at once and find like kind of like, okay, what am I going to do next? And then thinking to myself, well, I always had this urge to be like more absurd and silly and didn't have a place to do it. I would love to try things that instead of here's a box, the whole idea is to build a box to break it. And so I started making some YouTube videos. I did improv classes. I started a podcast, and I thought like I was going to like make YouTube videos and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I want to be funny, but I'm not. I need to learn how to like write jokes. So that's why I did like the improv class. And I was like, you know what? Like stand-up comedians know how to write jokes. I need to start doing stand-up so I can see real time which of my jokes suck and why they suck. So I started stand-up and I hated it. It was the worst experience of my entire life. And I made a commitment. I was like, if I want to learn anything from this, I can't just do it a few times. I'm going to do it 100 times. So I did it like 8 times. And I was like, this is the worst experience. I've never hated anything more. But I was like, I made a commitment. I'm going to do it. So then I got to 50 times. And I was like, wow, I've never made a worse decision. Like, I actively hate every time I get on stage.
Oh, yeah,
Then I did it like 80 times, and I was like, well, that was kind of fun. And then by the time I'd done it 100 times, I was like, dude, that kind of doesn't suck as bad. And then by the time I'd done it like 200 times, I was like, I kind of really like this.
Yeah.
And so then I stopped really making the YouTube videos because I was like focused on like writing stand-up jokes and stuff like that. And now I think stand-up's awesome, and like want to like keep trying to get better at it and keep doing it and seeing if I can do it for real. I mean, I guess I am doing it, getting on stage
we're all
is
doing
part
it.
of
Yeah,
it.
you're doing it for real.
But doing it for real, like, I mean, like, you're getting paid
We all get paid.
as you, but like my
paid,
face
but
sells
I'm just saying,
tickets.
I feel like it's important to say, we all book and get paid, so we are working comics.
Yeah, in a sense.
But you're talking like a big boy.
Yeah, in a sense. But yeah, so it's like that's something I would love to see. And so it was kind of like the loss of these things that comprise my identity and the idea of like, man, I've always felt that this area of my like desire went underserved. So I want to try to find things that can serve that, and then doing stand up and pushing through that initial like, I hate this so much, I've never hated anything more in my life. And then learning to appreciate it. Like that's been kind of an interesting journey. So hopefully I can keep getting better. That would be sick.
Yeah.
To actually get good. That'd be
Yeah.
Was that hyperbolic or literal with 800?
Oh, 800, like 100.
Oh, 800. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, you did it 800 times before you liked it.
No,
You are so dedicated.
By the time I'd done it like 80 or 90 times, I liked it. Then I'd done it 100 times, and I
Are
was
these like open mics?
Yeah, any time that I got on stage, I would consider it like a time doing it.
Wow.
And like the first 100, I was awful, so I wasn't getting paid for anything. So it was almost all open mics.
I admire the dedication.
I was just like, I'm not going to
learn.
learn anything if I quit. So I wanted to learn it, and I didn't want to look back and be like, man, I did it 20 times. You can't really learn anything from doing something 20 times. So I was like, I'm going to do it 100 times, and if I hate it, then I can quit. But at least like I made a commitment, so I'm going to do it. And then at about 100, I was like, it's kind of.
There's something very autistic in this approach.
Yeah,
Like,
just,
we're going to gather the data.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
had
we're
to learn how to
make sure you got to get enough sample.
The idea was to learn how to like write a joke and be funny. I have not figured that out yet. But
I don't know.
Give yourself credit.
but
Yeah.
I
You've been pretty funny.
I've started to enjoy stand up, which is fun. So we're gonna
And also the most important part.
I mean, I would say the most important is like being good at it.
I mean, yeah, but I mean,
That would be-
you can be good at something you hate, and it still would be
Yeah.
sucking your soul out. You know?
I agree. I think liking it is way more important than
Yeah.
being good at it, because I have met people who are really good at something and everybody's like, wow, you're amazing, and they're miserable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that's something that I eventually want to figure out, is because like I didn't really like golf that much either, but it was my entire life. I didn't really like school, but I was determined to be the best at it. So I don't know if I know how to like or dislike something.
That's
It's
real.
just like
Okay.
That's
there's-
real.
That's
Yeah.
real, yeah.
Like it's like there's things that I can put my time towards, and I derive a deep satisfaction from improving at something. But I think I like the feeling of improvement more than I like the thing. So whether it's like an Etch-a-Sketch or like nuclear physics, I think I would enjoy getting better at it.
Yeah.
It's really easy for something that you love at the beginning and then you become good at to stop liking it. That's a
Oh,
huge
yeah.
problem.
I think that's like a hyper focus thing, like I'll get on something and like feel like I learn everything I want to about it and then move on to something else. So I don't know. I mean, like I've been told that that's autism, also like ADHD, which I finally accepted after 20 years of being told I have ADHD, that I actually have it, and now I'm treating it and I feel better.
I want to treat it. I got diagnosed with ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, and OCD, and generalized anxiety. But like, who doesn't have that?
Right.
That doesn't even feel like a diagnosis.
Some people don't, but yes, yeah.
I don't believe that. That remains to be seen.
What is show my naivety a little bit here? What generalized anxiety? What does that mean exactly?
I think it just means you got the shake and bakes.
Okay.
You're just always concerned.
Yeah, or like
you're-
anything can trigger your anxiety. Like some people have
Yeah.
like social anxiety, so like social situations are what trigger them to have anxiety. Generalized anxiety is
Yeah.
pretty much just like
Just what's on all
anything
the
could
time.
trigger it, you know?
Interesting.
And
Okay.
also, like, being autistic in this society is just gonna make you
Yeah, anxious.
more anxious than the baseline. I was gonna say I got into I almost said I got into autism. I got into autism for the babes. I got into comedy. I about 6 years ago, I got sick with something. I still don't know what it is. We think we figured it out this last month when I found out I have partial heart failure. But I thought I was going in for a really bad asthma attack, and they were like, "No, there's fluid in your lungs." And I was like, "Wow, I've had this feeling for 6 years." And they were like, "You've had heart failure for 6 years." But we don't know if that's all of it, but that's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
So I was severely limited in what I could do. And I got really depressed. I gained a bunch of weight. Not that being fat is bad, but like it was not in a fun way. It was not like a gradual accumulation. It was like, boom. And I just felt very isolated. I felt very fatigued constantly. Couldn't do a lot of things I wanted to do. And then the pandemic hit, and I was further isolated, and I got more sick. And then I'm losing the timeline a little bit, but about 2 years ago, when I got diagnosed, I looked around at my life and I was like, okay, what are the things I have just written off being able to do because I was scared, because I thought I couldn't do them? And what could I do? Because I started dating, and I was like, wow, dating isn't really even anything like I thought it was. What if everything's like that? What else have I just written off that, oh, that's just not for me because I'm this, And so I did improv first at OKCI, and that was super fun. I met a person named Jen Shamron, and she introduced me to an open mic. I did the first open mic, and I thought, I don't like this. I didn't like it because not everybody there, but a lot of people there were being real gross and like racist and sexist and transphobic. And I was like, well, this is definitely not comfortable. I don't know if I want to do this again. And then I found a couple of people who were doing either open mics or scheduled shows that were focusing on what I liked, on comedy, that the punchline is not down. And that's when I started to really enjoy it, and I started to get high off of it. And then I've been doing that ever since, because it's so fun to do that in a room full of other people who are like rooting for you to succeed instead of people who are rooting for you to fail, because they think it's funny when people break down. Yeah. I don't think it's funny when people, get hurt, which I know is not cool. But I know.
Going to all the mics we go to, I definitely know people who like it when people suck.
Like it.
Yeah,
If somebody trips and they're okay,
that's different.
Funny.
That's human nature. But it's the people who
take pleasure out of others' pain.
And when they make their jokes, it's like it's just a constant punching
down.
Or it's a shock. Like the whole, literally, I think almost all comedy is about surprise, but the decision about whether it's a surprise where we're all in on it versus a surprise where someone's the butt of the joke.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
No, that's true.
People, they stop at surprise and they go, "Oh, I got the joke, I got the laugh," and it's super lazy to me.
Yeah.
No, that's a continued discussion off camera. But and both of you ladies, both of y'all touched on.
Dare you?
I'm sorry.
I'm leaving.
That is something I am very much trying to be better at. As we move forward following the pandemic, many say it was a time of isolation and hardships and challenged their mental health. I know you two have briefly touched on this already, but what did you all learn from the pandemic in that aspect? I can go first. I think I capitalized off the pandemic. I think I'm one of the only people that capitalized off the pandemic. I got West Nile encephalitis neuroinvasively in September 2018. Yep, 2018. Yep. And I was very sick for a very, very long time. I had to live here with my parents for a little bit, and then I went back to Florida to finish college and try to get back to my life. But I was very, very sick for a long time. Started to get a little bit better, and then went back to work, and then almost like kind of like right after I felt like I was getting my life back to like normal, the pandemic happened, and I also started getting very sick every day again, like vomiting every morning all the time. I had to carry like barf bags on me at all times. It was crazy. But long story short, I turned out I had an advance from Hashimoto's. My thyroid was covered in tumors, and I had to have a total complete neck dissection. And it turned out I had thyroid cancer, but they took it all out. But for me, I was already very depressed, and then the pandemic hit, and then I was very sick again, so that made my depression a lot worse. But I'm also happy the pandemic happened when it did, because, you know, I couldn't work anyways because of how sick I was, but nobody was working. So the pandemic was challenging for me mentally and physically. And I learned I didn't really like being told what to do by I just didn't really like being told what to do. And it also made me sort of more scared to live life than I felt like I had just gotten my life back, and then there's like a pandemic, and it's like, oh, if you get this, you might die. And I was like, please, please. The mosquito just almost took my life. This can't be happening.
Right.
But I learned I'm extremely resilient. I know that that's a little weird to say that that's what I learned from the pandemic, but I myself, I learned I'm extremely resilient and hard to kill.
I think those are good things to know about yourself.
Yeah.
I guess.
So you're an autistic West Nile cancer survivor.
Yeah.
That's a resume right there.
Yeah.
That's a
impressive.
lot of bumper stickers.
Yeah.
I wasn't like in the best spot before the pandemic. I was having a lot of health complications. And then, just like I said, I had another autistic burnout, did 2 months of treatment at, a facility here. And like I said, I felt like I was getting better and like moving in the right direction. And then the pandemic hit in March. And then at the end of April, my dad was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. And so that was just like a really bad time for that to happen. Thankfully, it was the cancer that killed him and not COVID. We were for the most part, our family was like very cautious about, exposing themselves to other people and wearing masks and all that. And me already being immunocompromised, I was pretty careful about it. But something like being in that much isolation kind of helped autistic traits come back out because I wasn't having to mask them. Just little like mannerisms and OCD type behaviors and the way I eat and stuff, because like when I live with other people, the variety of food that I eat changes a little bit because they eat different things. But when I don't know how many months went by where I ate the exact same breakfast, the exact same lunch, the exact same bowl of fruit. I took my bath at the same time every day. I went to bed at the same. Every single thing had to be exactly the same, and it was like the only way that I could cope. And something that I've learned now, now that I know how severe my sensory processing disorder is, I have like completely redone my apartment with like string lights. I don't keep like glass dishes next to my bed with my chapstick and stuff in it because it makes too much noise. Like none of my light bulbs are like higher than like 25 watts in my apartment. And so I just I learned it helped me figure out how to make like a comfortable little like cocoon for myself, and so that helped a lot. And like something that I've learned with isolation is that like we tell people, well, like, you don't need to isolate this much. You don't need to do this, behave this way. Like, this is how you're supposed to act socially, and you shouldn't spend this much time alone. It's like everybody's isolation threshold is different, and it is medicine to so many of us. Like I think I need more isolation maybe than the average person because I just need to decompress. Like I need things to be quiet, and so I think that the pandemic helped me learn where my isolation threshold is, and it also helped me discover that I have autism, So it was actually a pretty interesting experience, but it was very high anxiety. My dad was dying, and I was also like at extremely high risk for catching this. It would kill me if I had gotten COVID, and so like anytime I would be around people, I'm just like, you're dead, you're dead,
Yeah.
like you're gonna kill me. And so like it's taken a long time to like really drag myself out of it. I sat in the corner at Bricktown for like 6 months before I ever spoke to anybody or got on stage, So that's I don't know where I'm going with that.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think there's like a kind of lazy joke that keeps getting made right now, which is everybody thinks they're autistic now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Everyone thinks, I'm like, well, two things. Number one, the DSM changed so that now you can, I don't know how it happened for you, but for a while you couldn't get autism and ADHD as a co-diagnosis. They changed that. And then also the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
And I feel like those two things created this new awareness
Yeah.
of people being like, what am I like when I'm not observed?
Yeah.
It's like an electron being observed. It's-
Ooh,
we're-
nice
yeah.
reference.
What did you learn from the pandemic?
Similar thing. I think I was so busy my whole life trying to be what other people expected me to be. I literally didn't know what kind of music I liked or what kind of movie. I mean, I had those standouts that I would like, but if you like on Facebook back when they used to ask you like, name your top 5 albums or whatever, that was kind of the thing for a while. And I would always just struggle and obsess and try to figure it out. And I realized that my personality kind of changed just depending on who I was around.
Mm-hmm.
And it was exhausting. And of course that starts to feel, that's part of why being alone was so, I used to isolate a lot. And I thought it was like a bad trait because I was like depressive. And I realized now it's because like, it's the only time I got to be myself. And then I had, a year basically of that, of just, and I got to know myself and I was like, I actually really like myself for the first time. Like I'll be at home and I'll just like sing or I'll make a joke and I'll laugh at my own joke. Like, like a
That's
retiree.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, and I also learned, this is going to sound really corny, but this is an actual thing that I started implementing during the pandemic was I would talk to myself out loud to like congratulate myself on things that I had achieved.
I do that too.
Like
I talk to myself.
if you're feeling like poop and you can be like, listen, I'm so proud of you because things are really scary right now and you took out the garbage. Good for you.
Be kind to yourself.
Just be kind. And that was, and the pandemic obviously is terrifying, continues to be terrifying. And I have a lot of anxiety about when to mask and when not to mask. And it's scary because it feels like the government has just kind of let us be. And there's no guidelines and there's nobody at the helm. Nobody's, So anyway, it's just, but being alone, being isolated was I think that's why a lot of people have realized that they're neurodivergent in some way because you don't have the bounce of other people cluttering it up.
It's interesting to hear somebody else say that's like really had similar experience as far as like when you were diagnosed, even within like the last couple of years, because that's, I was just like, why am I doing these things? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I like, and I'm like, oh, well, these are things that I've been told my whole life, like not to do, because, and that's another thing too, like, as far as like females go, it's like behavior that is like, considered bad behavior in males is unacceptable in females.
Yeah.
So it's
a
like
very high bar.
Yeah. And that what frustrated me so much because like when I was talking during my assessment with that doctor, I was just like, why is it that when I get overwhelmed by sound, I want to scream and smash my face into walls? Like why? Like that's not normal, Where's that freaking going with that? I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
It's all right.
Yeah, I was going somewhere with that. I know it is. Yeah. I took my Adderall today. Was I talking? Was I just talking about my sensory
Females.
stuff? Yeah, females. And that's and that's what I told him. I'm just like, yeah. Well, it always goes back to like, oh well, you've experienced these types of traumas. That's what it is, and. But it was also like, well, you can't hold that in. And I'm like, well, sometimes I run into the bathroom and punch myself in the face when I get overwhelmed, and he's like, well, you can't, he's like, that's not autism though. Like you're going to do that in front of people. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure that, it was just frustrating. So it's been really interesting. I brought it up a minute ago. That book by Fern Brady, she's the comic that was diagnosed with autism later in life. It's called Strong Female Character. I'd highly recommend it to anyone with autism, especially females that have been diagnosed later in life.
It's a great title.
And she talks about how people with autism, because she has really severe meltdowns as well that can become violent. And she says, are forced to hold it in,
Yeah.
and then it manifests in like different problems, like autoimmune issues,
Yep.
different types of pains and aches. And it's wild to me that there are doctors that will sit there and be like, this one thing means that you can't have autism. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you do that completely eliminates the possibility of it. And it's really frustrating. And we don't have enough awareness. We don't have enough doctors that are like educated on it. It seems like it's like you have to be either on this end of the spectrum or that end of the spectrum to have autism. It has to look like autism in order for it to be autism.
There needs to be a paradigm shift, and I think it's starting to happen, where instead of considering autism from the outside in, we're considering it from the inside out.
Yeah.
Not how does your autism affect society, but how does it affect you?
Yeah.
And it's really that simple.
Yeah.
And once you understand that, it makes a lot more sense. And you're right. I think as when you're socialized as a girl, you learn very quickly that exceptions will not be made for you.
No.
You will be alone on the playground. You will be in the corner. Like, it's just, no one's going to give you another chance if you act out of bounds. And so you learn to suppress even your most basic sensory and emotional needs to the point where I often don't even know what they are. I don't realize I'm having a meltdown until I'm in the car hitting myself in the face.
Mm-hmm.
I don't excuse myself necessarily. I just, it just bubbles up later, and it's just, I think that's why a lot of us have substance abuse problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I also, before you tell us what you learned from the pandemic, I like how you said you learned to like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I love who I am the most when I'm alone, because I know that and my animals, but like I know that no one's judging me, right? And like I really think it goes back to what you said, like being observed. Like I struggle with liking myself all the time, but when I'm alone, I like who I am.
Yeah.
All my walls are down, all my guards are down, and sometimes I'm like, why can't I be this Carly in front of everyone else? Because maybe they would like her more. But I feel like it's just like, because I've spent 34 years of my life being told that the way I naturally am is not okay, I still can't break down that barrier of like, well, let me just show people. But I do think that the more I hang out with autistic people, the less I feel like I have to mask when I'm surrounded by other autistic people.
Yeah.
So anyways, I just wanted to piggyback off that. Cody, what'd you learn from the pandemic, Maverick?
The point you guys, it's interesting you said, like, I think I wanted to say, I'm trying to figure out the right words to say it, but I had kind of a similar experience tangentially, where when I would try to assimilate into friend groups or social groups, even if I was successful, I would feel awful. Like it would be like an excruciating experience. And so I decided one day, like, you know what? Like all these things that people say about me that I desperately want to prove wrong, whether it's that I'm strange, weird, annoying, too much, like all these, like, I'm like, if I don't describe myself that way, I would describe myself as like, a little more bizarre and out there. Those are just things that I like. And I'm going to like stop trying to be friends with all these people and just kind of do my own thing. Now, it wasn't like the movies where everybody just ends up loving you for who you are. Yeah, like I lost a lot of friends and it was very isolating. But at the end of the day, I could look myself in the mirror and be like, you know what? I was doing me. I didn't have to try to impress anybody. And so, it's at times that journey can be very lonely, but it is also very like deeply satisfying to be like, you know what? I made a choice to behave in a way that I was most comfortable. And I don't mean like being a jerk. I'm just saying, if I, whether it's like the way I move, the way I speak, different idiosyncrasies, instead of always like analyzing every moment, just being like, I'm just going to let myself do that. People aren't really going to like it a lot, and that's fine. So I think that you made a good point about that. And I think that's an experience that a lot of people who are a little different have. What did I learn from the pandemic? That's a tough one because I know that I should have learned something. And I think, like for a lot of us, a lot of things happened societally and a lot of things happened personally. And I haven't quite deciphered the wisdom from them yet. And it's something that I'm pretty hard on myself about. So like March of 2020 is when I was in Asia playing professional golf, and my back was like giving out, and they sent everybody home because of COVID. And at that time, it also expedited the decision. My business partner and I kind of parting ways on the business ventures. We're still best friends. I would like to think that our great communication had a lot to do with being able to kind of move past that and have some tough conversations about, hey, I still want to be best friends. How can we, and then also, obviously, I'm not in school anymore at that point. I'd finished. So it was like this kind of time period of like, this loss of all these things that like, because if it's like, if I wasn't going to classify my identity by who I was around and that kind of thing, and I was just doing my own thing. Well, I had these things I was pursuing, and I liked that I was pursuing these things and progressing. Now they're all gone. So, and then also kind of the world shut down, everybody's by themselves. So I was like, okay, this is obviously a time of like great change in my life. What am I supposed to learn? And I feel like I haven't learned anything. And it's very frustrating. It's like, I feel like all I know is that like my current, this sounds so melodramatic, but there was a time, a few years ago where, gosh, you can cut this out if it sounds too arrogant. But so I was the captain of the golf team. I was a first team All-American, and I graduated #1 in my entire university. At the same time, my best friend and I had these successful businesses. At the same time, I turned professional in golf. This thing I'd been working, over a decade on, and, was in another country playing and progressing, whatever. And like, I really had this, a very high opinion of myself, not in a cocky way, but I was just very self-assured. Like, these are the things that I've devoted time and energy to, and they're bearing fruit because I'm putting the time and energy into them. And then for one reason or another, all of them are kind of gone. And so it kind of revealed to me like, oh, this way that I'm looking at myself, like my self-image being derived from progression at skills, is not probably the best way to do things. But, fast forward today, I haven't really figured out another way. I would say that oftentimes my general mood is just like disappointed in myself. Like, even if I'm like having a good time with friends, I'm like, oh man, like I'm kind of still an effing loser, She said not to cuss. I'm trying my. I didn't realize how often I curse until I'm like having to
it's hard to
rein
stop.
it in.
But
You're
realizing,
censoring me.
No.
but realizing something.
Oh my God,
And so,
Cody, you
like I was
really
talking to
cracked me
Ashley the other
up.
day, like, because me and Ashley become pretty good. These last few months of our friendship are going to be awesome, by the way.
And then sadly,
But yeah,
It's gonna end.
yeah.
on the
Yeah.
train station.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a meltdown. You're like,
It's
she's
been
psycho.
good,
I'm out.
Oh.
But I was talking to Ashley just a couple days ago, and it's like I used to be someone that I admired, and I took that for granted. Like it was a very like self-assured place to be. Now I'm someone that I'm disappointed in, and I want to find a way to become. And I understand a lot of it is probably like, oh, be nice to yourself, have grace. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if it was the way I was raised, the way I look at the world, but like, I want to earn that. Like, I want to earn my own admiration. And I just don't know how. And so I would say that I haven't learned anything, and that's my most recent failure, I would say.
Can I just pause at something?
Sure.
Learning how something doesn't work is learning something.
Yeah.
So recognizing something is not working for you is growth, my friend.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to
yeah.
you, but you have grown.
I mean, it was working really well. I kind of loved it. I loved my life. I was I would wake up every day and be like, dude, this is awesome. How is this my reality?
There's nothing wrong with that.
And
That's amazing.
So to kind of, and it was weird because like from the time, we're kind of getting off topic here, but like from the time I was little, for some reason I just was like, I'm gonna do great things, and then like each step of the way, it's like I was excelling at whatever I was doing, and I kind of just became accustomed to that, and then to take such a precipitous fall into like loserdom has been something I should learn from, but have not, and I don't know what the lesson is yet.
Yeah.
But maybe we can
There's
revisit
still
this
on a journey.
episode in a year when I'm
Oh
in
Oh my
It's
gosh!
prison.
No,
You're-
stop! Oh my god, you wouldn't
I
survive one day in
finally
prison.
did it. You know? I
you-
took a life. You
You're
know.
going down a different path.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you don't
Yeah.
think of it as like failing or falling. You're just going in a different direction now.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
you've been extremely resilient. I know what it's like to have, health problems and be like, well, you can't do any of these things anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry, you got to figure out a new life. You know.
Yeah. I
And
wanted
it
to be a
does-
director.
Yeah.
That was my goal.
Yeah.
And
Still
then I
can
got,
be.
well, I'd like to, but
Still
Yeah.
can be.
I don't know. It got fatigued, and I was like, well, I can't be on set. I can't stand around and wait for people, and and you just, and then you have to look at yourself and be like, well, what am I outside of my accomplishments? And I think, especially as autistic people, we have a tendency to see our value in what we can achieve and what we can prove. And honestly, I know it sounds really cheesy, but like at a baseline, you have value regardless of anything that you accomplish. And that's honestly the hardest thing to grasp onto. And that is something that the pandemic kind of drove home. It's like, well, there's nothing else here. There's no one else in the room. So I can either be nothing or I can face that I exist and I matter. And that's literally my only job. Because life is really short. Every year, it goes faster.
Mm-hmm.
How old are you now?
27.
Yeah, 27.
What?
So I'm 36. Yeah, you're a baby face.
Oh my
but
god, I thought you were my age.
I thought we were the same age. We're not.
how old are you?
Oh, I thought we were.
I'm 34. Anyways,
Hell
that's
yeah.
It just goes faster
Yes,
every
it
year is the
does.
point, and especially from older people I've spoken to, every decade goes faster. And then you die, and when you die, it does not matter what you achieved because, I mean, depending on what your worldview is, like religion, all that, we're not supposed to talk about that. I personally don't foresee things happening after death. So for me, the only thing that matters is like connection to other people and how I felt about myself. And that's it. And everything else is just something fun that got to happen and exciting. And if you enjoyed it, that's the fun part.
great. Thanks for sticking around, y'all. Once again, please visit autismfoundationok.org to learn more about us and who we are as an organization. Something that I do throughout Oklahoma and the Oklahoma City and Tulsa area is host socials. In Oklahoma City, I host a monthly autistic adult social where we go around Oklahoma City and do lots of fun things. Ashley, you've been to one. It was a great time, right?
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
All right, cool. You guys are going to come to this next one. I know.
Yeah, I
it.
didn't even know about the last one. I would have gone for sure.
But we do these in Oklahoma City, and we do them also in Tulsa. In Tulsa, I partner with Beyond the Spectrum to do an adult social. We have a parent caregiver social monthly in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And in Tulsa, we also have a young adults social, which we partner with Not Your Average Joe on that one. So please follow us on Instagram at Autism Foundation OK. Stay up to date with those. We have to wrap this conversation up. I feel like we could all be here all night talking
Yeah,
about
for
the
sure.
wonders and the awesomeness of autism and mental health. I would just like to say to you guys and to the listeners, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for sharing your personal stories with me and the people that are going to watch and listen to this. It really means a lot. Thank you so much. You're all my friends. I'm so happy I know you all.
Thank
fun.
you.
And this podcast is brought to you by the Oklahoma Department of the Oklahoma State Department of Health. So thank you to them, and thank you to the Autism Foundation of Oklahoma, and we will see you next time. Have a great night.
Yay. Thanks for having us. That was a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
it was fun.
Yeah, it was really great.
Thank you again for tuning in to Unmasking Autism with AFO. I'm your host, Carley Marissa Dummitt. Thank you again to the Oklahoma State Department of Health. And for any information on our trainings or our events, please visit www.autismfoundationok.org or follow us on social media platforms at Autism Foundation OK. As always, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.